Welcome to Political Trade Secrets, an inside look at campaigns and politics, where we pull back the curtain, look under the hood, and investigate all aspects of politics and how elections are won. Now, here's your host, Dustin Olson.
And welcome to Political Trade Secrets. I'm your host, Dustin Olson. It is great to have you all joining us from across the internet right now. Thank you for doing so, and thank you for your commitment to our country and to serving your community, your state, and our country. We really do appreciate it. We are here to empower conservatives across this land as leaders for a great movement to reignite American patriotism and to be the most effective citizens they could possibly be. And today we're going to have a great conversation on Ulysses Pacts. We're going to tell you what that is and how you can use them to avoid pitfalls and temptations, the siren calls on your campaigns that seek to take you into destruction on the rocks of the Siren Island, as we will be telling you about in a little bit. So wherever you're watching, you can join the conversation, post a comment, or you can post a question. You can join this conversation. We really do appreciate your thoughts and to include you. And I'm really excited to have Sean Bartley joining me. Sean, how are you doing today?
Doing well. Good morning to you. Glad to be with you. Glad to be with all of our viewers. So really appreciate everybody being with us and look forward to a great conversation today. I think we got a lot. Was really excited about this in show prep today. So
yeah, it made a difference for me. I was thinking about, oh my goodness, there's so many places where I could use Ulysses Pacts right now, and there's places where I am using it, and it is making a difference, in particular in my health and workout regimen. So that is, there's so many ways you can use this. As most of our episodes are, you could take a lot of what causes performance on a political campaign and use it in your business or your personal life. So hopefully you'll get some value from that as well. If you would like to be a part of the Political Trade Secrets Insiders, you can go to politicaltradesecrets.com. You can sign up, get exclusive stuff. And one of the things that I really encourage people to do, and you can also join the conversation this way, you can go and you can join our community, our text community, by personally texting me at 202-918-3345. You'll get a text from me. The first one will be an auto text, but everything after that is going to be for me, or if I hand my phone over to Sean for him to text, you'll be getting a message from us personally. You can also reply back to that, let us know. So it's another place for people to post questions, and we will read all the ones that come to us by text. So one of the things to know when you get the text message, so text, you can say hello, whatever you want to say, you will get a text back that's going to have a link. You'll have to click on that link. So because of the FCC and the rules and regulations, you have to click the link to opt in to be able to do that. So it's real simple, though. Be sure to click that link, and you will then be able to be in constant communication. No matter what our big tech overlords do, you can still be a part of the conversation, still be a part of the movement, and we really do encourage you to do that. And thank you very much to everybody who's already posting nice comments. Sean, would you like to tell people about our sponsors?
Absolutely. Look, are you thinking about running for office or what it takes to be a powerful political leader in your neck of the woods? Reach out to us personally. It's olsonstrategies.com. OLSON strategies.com. You can email me. It's Sean, SEAN at olsonstrategies.com, or Dustin at olsonstrategies.com. And we'd love to just set up that conversation with you today and really work with you on that. And then we're also proud to be sponsored by Grassfire. It's www.grassfire.us. What do? Canvassing, petitioning, live calling. It's really all of the one-on-one human-to-human interaction that a campaign will have with voters. So make it count. There's nobody better in the business at that actual interaction than Grassfire. So it's www.grassfire.us. They also fuel 10centtexting.com. This is your way to connect with voters right where they are on their mobile device. image, GIF, short video right there in the body of the text message. It's really quite incredible what you're able to do, and really they do it better than anybody. They literally wrote the book on political texting. So go to 10centtexting.com and check that out today. So we're really proud of to be working with these great sponsors, and I'm really looking forward to the episode today where we're going to talk about some of the common pitfalls of elections. And don't worry, we're not going to just leave you there. We're going to also give you some ways out. So, Dustin, I can't hear you.
Yep. So before we go into the distinction of a Ulysses pack, which one of the things that we provide here, I think is unique about our shows, that we use what we call our strategic distinctions, ways to look at things, mental models, to give you different perspectives, to look at the news, to pull back the curtain on what's happening in the news, on how to cause performance in your campaign, how to be the best candidate possible, how to really find a winning strategy in whatever race that you're in. So that's something that we bring to this. And today we're going to be talking about Ulysses Pacts. But before we do that, if you can just mention a couple of the possible pitfalls that people do run into that might be applicable to this.
Absolutely. Look, thinking about campaigns in particular, one of the common pitfalls for candidates is that they manage their own campaign. Mm-hmm. Had a conversation with a candidate last week who was like writing the marketing plan. I'm like, what are you doing? And they're like, this is something that I just thought needed to be done. I'm like, well, is this the best use of your time? And then it was kind of a sheepish no. But
and ultimately, who's going to be the ones implementing that plan?
Exactly. And so it was really enlightening because with a few questions, with a few questions, you can really get to, well, maybe this isn't the thing I ought to be doing, mm-hmm. Which is going to be true of all these, by the way. Yes. But it really starts there. So here, basically taking hours away from what could be done to manage your own campaign. It also just creates a lot of difficulty, and where all the bottlenecks are going to basically be with you as the candidate. So
what are a couple of the other ones?
Yeah, fail to articulate in 25 words or less the why of your campaign.
Mm-hmm. And what happens oftentimes in campaigns is the Me Too messaging. People wanting to go and really appropriate whatever their opponent's message is because of a kind of a sense of inadequacy, I think, is what happens ultimately. That, they're saying this, we need to say this now. So we need to do exactly what our opponent's doing, even though that doesn't provide any kind of real choice in the situation.
Absolutely. So that goes to feeling the need to co-opt your opponent's messages. So, hey, they said something that I agree with. Let's just lump it in there. Mm-hmm. And the end result is some gobbledygook that doesn't really mean anything at the end of the day. So then a couple others around fundraising, leaving fundraising to others, or avoiding fundraising and fundraising calls.
Yep.
Being your own scheduler.
Yep.
And so what's the common refrain we hear, Dustin? Well, I've kept my own schedule my whole life. Why would I give it to somebody now? Who knows better?
Or in the middle of the campaign, candidates feel like they're losing control of their life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, this is good. We're going to get to more of these as we go through, I think. But at the core of these, there's more going on any one of these. For every single candidate and for every single campaign, there's going to be more that's actually going on that are probably at the core or at the heart of what's actually going on in each of these pitfalls that campaigns commonly find themselves inside of. By the way, I want to mention a couple of the comments. People are sharing the program. Thank you very much. And And thank you for the good mornings. We appreciate that. Also got the comment. It sounds like it's going to be an awesome conversation. Sometimes when we are running for office, it is easy to get caught up in doing things for endorsements or for financial reasons and forgetting the real reason that we are running to get elected to serve the citizens of our community, state, or country. And that's absolutely right. So there's going to be things that, but you know that these things are going to be coming up. So I'm going to just tell a little story. So if you remember the story of the Iliad and the Odyssey, a lot of people had to read that when they were in school, but I will give you the Cliff Notes version right now. So Ulysses or Odysseus, and in the Greek he's called Odysseus, is on his journey, and he's told of the island of the Sirens, and how there's these creatures that are part human, but they're also bird or whatever else, and they what they do is they sing these beautiful songs that speak to every single person who hears them sing. Hears a different song that speaks to their weaknesses, whatever it is craven or whatever is in their soul, that like they're demons as opposed to their better angels, whatever it is that their temptations are, they sing to that, and that's what you hear. And what happens, the ships, as they go by this island, they steer into the rocks and they crash, and every ship that goes by is destroyed. So Ulysses is thinks, okay, what are we going to do to get by this island? So what he comes up with, he has all the sailors on his ship put beeswax in their ears, and then he has them lash him to the mast of the ship so that he can hear the sirens call, partly because apparently it also has hints about your future in the song. He wants to be able to hear it, but not be able to take action to endanger the ship. So they're able to pass by the island of the Sirens, and everything goes well. And the idea from that is to have an Odysseus contract, or what we most people call now a Ulysses Pact, that you now know, like in this moment, you have an idea what weaknesses you have. You have an idea of the temptations that typically will derail whatever it is that you're out to achieve in life. So think about that now and put systems and structures in place now in order to be in a place that when you end up, and that inevitable time when you're going to have those temptations come up, those weaknesses, those whatever you want to call it, they're going to rear their ugly head. What systems and structures, what Ulysses Pacts do you have in place to help you to get through that? And this is really important. I mentioned the sense of loss of control that candidates have. Oftentimes in the middle of the campaign, there's going to be a sense of loss of control. You actually have agency. If you're making the decision now, you're making the declaration, you're putting the systems and structures in place now, you are actually giving yourself, you're the one who's actually deciding this, as opposed to, whatever your weaker tendencies might be later on. So Sean, as I lay that story out and I create what a Ulysses Pact is, what are some of the things that you'd like to tell people about that?
Yeah, well, I think you really hit it on the head. So there's going to be some things that you naturally know, or you may know, are character flaws or defects of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
But recognizing that early on, like, you know what? I really like to be liked.
Yeah.
Like, no kidding. That is something I can't help it. I want to be liked.
And everybody has that. Yeah. And it's a question as to whether it's going to be something, well, everybody has it. So probably everybody needs to be thinking about how that's going to derail them at some point.
Mm-hmm. And what can that look like in a campaign? It could be saying yes to everybody that either gives you an idea or an event to go to or a meeting to take or any of these things, right? Mm-hmm. And then your time ends up being filled not with things that are on mission, but with things that other people suggested and, well-meaning enough, but it's not the things that make the difference. Not for your time.
Yep.
And so, or it could be hiring someone to make yourself feel better, or, they
We
suggest.
we have seen campaigns make rash hiring decisions because there's this perceived lacking or inadequacy. We have to fill it now, and they just grasp for whatever they can grab at that moment.
Mhm.
Whoever it is, whether that person makes sense or might be a problem down the line, they just go ahead and they grasp at straws.
Yeah. Well, maybe, maybe it's a fear of rejection that's your thing.
Hmm.
So there is going to be that is going to come in a campaign. I
Yeah.
hate to break it to you. Someone is going to tell you no, at least. Um,
And that's why people have such a hard time with fundraising calls.
mhm.
Oftentimes, is they fear that rejection. Pat has a comment. That's
Okay.
where staff plays the bad guy. That's good. That could be part of when we get into the Ulysses Pacts. That could be where you actually have a structure put in place. We also have a comment here. A common issue is the candidate wants to lead as a candidate instead of being empathetic to their constituents' needs. I find rarely people want to elect an authoritarian leader, but they do want to elect someone who will represent their core values. That's just my observation. Well, thank you for that comment. Yeah. So, by the way, feel free to post a comment or question wherever you're watching across the internet. If you see places, by the way, you can also say these are the kinds of things that I know if I was running would be the things that would derail the campaign or kind of short circuit your best intentions. For instance, Sean mentioned how when you're on the campaign trail, someone comes to you with an idea. Candidates hate having to say no to that. Pat made a great point that that's where staff can be the bad guy and deal with that. So having a structure set up in advance for who, so the candidate can say you need to talk to person X about that or what have you. You have a scheduler. They're the ones who are going to be deciding that stuff. So a couple of things to do though to really start to get at the core of this. Most of these are not going to necessarily be mechanical pitfalls. They're going to be the temptations. As I don't know the fellow's name, but one guy called it the top 10 hits of your siren songs. You want to actually spend a little bit of time and go through and list, try to do 10, 12 ways that you get derailed. So, and a couple of ways to look at this is we all have commitments. Like I have a commitment to work hard, yet we also have hidden commitments as well that play just as much of a role. So, for instance, anybody who's ever dealt with this, you have a commitment to work hard, yet you have a hidden commitment maybe to be distracted at times, to procrastinate. Anybody who's spent a significant time on social media, you see something on social media and then 40 minutes later you aren't doing the thing that you set out to do and you realize that you've been spending most of your time being distracted. Well, there's a hidden commitment there to be distracted.
Yeah.
So one of the things is whenever a commitment of yours isn't happening, there's probably a hidden commitment that you just are not aware of. It's a blind spot. And distinguishing that, actually being aware of that, will give you power over it. So the first thing to do is to actually distinguish what are these top 10 hits of your siren songs? What are the things that get in the way of you actually achieving objectives traditionally in your life? One way to do that is to just start doing a list. Another term we use for these is disempowered context. What are the things? Where is it that you go when you kind of get dark or disempowered or second guessing yourself? What are the things that show up? And Sean, maybe share a couple of ways you've seen candidates go
Yeah.
to.
Yeah. Well, I think the really shows up in fundraising. You talked about this. So the commitment is, hey, whatever the broader commitment is of your campaign is one thing, but you also have a commitment to avoid rejection. Like
Mhm.
you haven't said, hey, I'm setting out to avoid rejection. It's just something that, that people can definitely set up their life to avoid the idea of rejection.
I think most people probably do.
Yeah, exactly. And And I say, I know I'm certainly someone who does that, and a lot less so than I used to, recognizing it. And I just know that. So what do? They get into fundraising time. They might even say, "Okay, I'm going to do this," but then it's very easy to find the distraction, and so the oh, I just need to find someone's phone number, and I'm going to look for it, not in my list of contacts, of course, but I'm going to look for it Twitter.
Exactly.
It's not there, just so you know. But and then they're reading all that, and then they get caught up in this article, and then they get caught up in this thing, and now a half hour's gone by, and not a person's been called.
Yeah.
And so a very easy trap to fall into. Well, it's really what commitment won out.
Yep.
It was the commitment of not being rejected. Maybe there's something about that call that you don't want to make. Have you not talked to the person in 10 years?
Yeah.
Or whatever. And so you avoid it.
Yeah.
And
these are all topics, by the way, that you probably want to avoid genuinely. But I want to really stress that if you don't distinguish them, if you don't take them out of, we talked about this yesterday in our program about the blind spots, the area of discovery, that the things you don't know. Right now, you probably don't know what some of these are. I know for myself, as I've done this kind of work on myself, that I didn't necessarily know that that I wasn't. I just wasn't aware of some of the things, and they kind of run the show. So if you don't know about it, if you can't see it, if it's a blind spot, then you have no power over it. You can't do something. You can't create a Ulysses Pact to deal with it. So what are some of the other ones? One that is particularly, I don't know, almost evil that people deal with. It is insidious. Is we've had many candidates in the past that we've worked with who they want to prove to themselves that they aren't as good as maybe people think they are. And Sean, you might be able to say it more clearly than I'm saying it, but you get what I'm saying. This is not uncommon, by the way.
yeah, well, I think what you're getting at, and I think there's a broader thing about needing to be right about whatever that is. In the instances that we've seen, it's I know I'm not I know that I've got a lot of flaws and I'm not worthy of whatever.
Yeah. So if someone runs for office, sometimes they want to be important, they want to make a difference, everything that goes along with it, all natural things that come along with it, but at the same time they also have this need to be right, that they aren't worthy of the role. And this is not like an uncommon thing. This is not uncommon at all. It's just something that happens with people who run for office. Oftentimes they're trying to fix that thing.
Yeah.
John, you have something you want to add?
I'm just looking at some of the comments, and I really appreciated that from regarding rejection. I thought that was just great. I don't know if you.
Yeah, you have to go through a lot of rejection to get acceptance in everything in life, except your friends and family. Is that the one?
Yeah. Well, no, it was the. It just brought a smile to my face. It says, "Sean, everyone loves you." It's hard to believe anyone would reject you. So I.
Well, it's very true. It's very true, and so for most people, they have to deal with this, but for Sean, he does not.
Yeah.
He's one of the rare people. The rest of us, though. No, that's very good.
Great, very really appreciate that, and it really does get to this idea. Even these things being liked, or how that occurs, or being rejected and how that occurs, it really is something that's made up on our end. Mm-hmm. Let's just get into the what's so of fundraising. You call, in theory, you make the ask, and they either say yes or no.
Yep.
Now, sometimes what happens is, you make the call, you're afraid they're going to say no, so you never make the ask, then there's never actually any resolution to it. And so that is another way it can happen, but it's all about avoiding this idea of rejection, which doesn't really happen anyway. No one says, like, let's say you make the fundraising ask, okay? They don't say, I want to be very clear, I'm rejecting you. Click. That never happens. Never in the history of fundraising is that how the response has gone. Now, they might say, no, I'm not interested. They might say, no, I really don't have the resources right now. They might say whatever they say.
Yeah. And all you know is what they say. You can't get inside of their head.
That's right.
And by the way, there's also going to be judgment. People are going to judge you no matter what. So if you're going to run for office, you have to realize that no matter what, people are going to make judgments about you, and you can't avoid it. And people are judging you right now. For us to do this on a daily basis, we have to realize that people judge us constantly. And it's just, once you get that that's going to happen no matter what, and you don't really get to choose to not have it happen, you can put yourself out there. So that's something else that the candidates might go through. There's the what you mentioned about the kind of message creep, like, oh, I'm going to take my opponent's message, I'm going to take this opponent's message, and basically you throw out any sense of strategy. Like if someone else says something, oh, I have to say that too. We have to do more of that. I like liken it to the old movie, Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? That George Clooney's in. And it's about, kind of Depression era in the South. And there's this, the governor is running for re-election, and there's this candidate who's all about talking about reform. And the governor and his advisors are talking about how they need to get them some of that reform. And of course, one of them says, well, aren't we the government? Wouldn't we be reforming ourselves? And they figure out that doesn't necessarily make sense, but they're just trying to co-opt the other person's message. And there's oftentimes that's what's going on in the campaign, is that you feel there's a sense of inadequacy in that situation, that I need more of that. But what you're giving up in that is giving up any kind of contrast. So these are things that can take people off of the track. One of the things that you can do to get to a sense of this is the strengths and weaknesses matrix that we've talked about. I'll make a version of that here real quick, but it's basically just a 4-quadrant box that you can have. And it really, you just look at you on them on you, and them on them. And in that process, it's really important to talk to some of the closest people in your family who know you really well, and maybe have a campaign manager, maybe have the political consultant, have people go and talk to people who are close to you and get what your strengths are and your weaknesses, and not just from a bio perspective, but in the way you handle things in life, to get that kind of, they call this in business a 360-degree interview process, where you're actually finding out what people think about you anonymously. It's a very helpful and humbling process oftentimes, but that's a really helpful way to do it.
This was something I was thinking about in particular today. So creating the Ulysses Pact, the accountability, as others might call it, around this. So one of the pitfalls that we mentioned earlier is it could be not recognizing character defects and flaws. So what structures can you put into place? Well, first is use the message matrix. So actually fill this out. The you on you, the you on them, the them on you, and the them on them. And then ask others to be straight with you about some potentially unforeseen flaws.
Yep. And we're talking about character flaws. We're talking about how you handle your daily life, because this is where it's going to be in the kind of the sausage making of the campaign. It's where it's going to show up.
Yeah, and by the way, and these aren't necessarily bad things. We say flaws and you think, oh, bad, but perhaps the way you handle things is that you really muscle through and you power through, and that's what you do. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's served you well for however long you've done it. But if that is the way that you handle most situations, knowing that and really discovering that for yourself, that, hey, this could be the way that I'm going to handle this during a campaign. Well, first you want to be very aware of that. You want to make sure others are aware of that,
Yep.
and just make sure you're sharing that internally, and look for the places where your opponents, if they really get that about you, might try to use that against you. So be alert for those things.
Well, the number one place, what you just suggested, that it could become a pitfall and the temptation to continue that behavior, it becomes a pitfall, is when you get well into the campaign, and burnout is very likely to happen at that point. So that's the danger there. Is that's the pitfall that can come out of that being kind of your MO and how you handle things, is that you're likely to burn out. So we're going to start pivoting a little bit into the into Ulysses Pact. So Ulysses Pact is ultimately, it's a declaration. It is something that you're doing now, knowing that you have these potential pitfalls, these potential ways you handle things that could cause you problems in the future, things you're tempted to that are easy, like when the sirens start singing, this is what they're going to be singing to you to take you off of the track that you're on. So thinking about that, it could be as simple as when you have the scheduler and you have the campaign team, that we make sure that if you have a late night meeting, a late night speech, you're going to be out on the road late at night, that the next morning you don't come in until 10. Like, that is just something that's going to happen. You might not like it all the time, but it's going to be important that you have that space, or that you have at least once a week, you have time with your spouse to, an evening where you actually spend time and you're completely unplugged. Or maybe it's, sometimes it's campaigns do this. It can be very difficult, but you take Sundays off. I don't recommend that as the only thing you do, but maybe it's every other Sunday or something like that. But you create some kind of. So this is great. Call Sean. He can find those flaws really fast on the phone. Well, Sean doesn't look for flaws in people, but he's good at taking people through that process, as I am, to just help people see a little bit more clearly how they could be affected in a campaign by how they typically handle stuff. And we've both been trained to listen for that, and it really does make a difference for people to be aware of that. Well, there's some other Ulysses Pacts. So let's talk about fundraising, because fundraising is by far the biggest thing you're going to be spending your time on in the campaign. There's scheduling that's part of it. One of the things that we have is a Ulysses Pact. It's a declaration that we say at the beginning of a campaign, and everyone has to be bought in on this, and the candidate really needs to be the source of it, is that fundraising time is sacred. When it gets put on the calendar, this is sacred time. We're going to treat it as though it's the most wholly important time, and it cannot be affected, as opposed to an open block. Just by having that context for it makes it more likely to be protected. Sean, any thoughts about that? And then maybe some of the structures we can go into about Facebook messages or whatever else might show up.
Yeah, well, I think a declaration and really buying into that is a key first step.
Mm-hmm.
Saying, if you were to rank these things, like, okay, this is the most important thing of a campaign. You've heard us say it before. Now, when you hear us say it, if you go, well, and you start to think of all the other important things and say, oh, well, maybe 75% of my time is not the thing. Well, really get that for yourself and get what happens when you aren't open to the idea that this is the thing that feeds in, that fundraising is the thing that feeds into everything else. And, we can definitely share with you how it does make grassroots campaigning possible, and how it ensures that when you're out knocking on doors, people have actually heard of you, and those types of things. So, and that all comes out of, and where you can really hone your message in a in a pretty quick way, hone what your vision is and really be able to do that. That all happens in fundraising. But if you really hear the first thing is, well, 75% of your time needs to be spent fundraising, you go, nope,
Yeah.
nah, not for me.
So it's really important that the candidate make the declaration that fundraising call time will be sacred. And
Yeah.
once it's on the calendar, it needs like an act of God to get moved.
That's right.
That this is what we're doing. And here's the thing: this is part of the Ulysses Pact. That if we need to reschedule something, that whatever time was on the calendar for fundraising call time is now going to be put somewhere else. Something else is going to get moved. If it's less time knocking on doors or whatever it is, that's what's going to happen now, is that time is going to get rescheduled. So let's go into the actual fundraising call time.
Yes.
The fundraising call time, the biggest thing that we see is a lot of distraction. It could be as simple. There's every single situation for every single campaign is going to be a little bit different, but there's going to be some things that are pretty common. It is when you are in fundraising call time, you are going to have this temptation to want to do something else. You're going to have a temptation to be distracted. You're going to have a temptation to avoid rejection. You're going to have a temptation to do, the marketing plan for your campaign, whatever it is. You're going to have some kind of temptation to do something different than what you are there to do. So what are we going to do what are Ulysses Pacts, things that we're going to set up now? So in that weaker moment, what are the beeswax we're going to put on our ears, or how we're going to latch ourselves to the mast? It might be that's what you need to do, is just tie yourself to the chair, and you're not getting out until you're done. So campaigns that we've worked on in the past, oftentimes we have the candidate go to a separate office. It may not even be the campaign office. It might be a supporter of the campaign that has a small, almost closet of an office that has very little going on in the office, and the candidate goes and makes phone calls. One of the biggest distractions you might have is if you have your computer. Sometimes you need the computer to be able to make the phone calls. Hopefully you can set up a system where that's not the case. If you have call sheets, that's a really good way to do it. But it could be as simple as, when you're making phone calls, the internet on your computer is turned off. There's tools like this you can use. Freedom, I think, is a software that you can actually schedule your computer to be off for 1 hour, 2 hours, and it just turns off the internet, and then that's all you can do is make phone calls. It could be, this is a smart thing that candidates have done in the past: take Facebook or any other social media off of your phone. That's a really good way to distract yourself. Or for those folks who want to confirm that people don't like them or whatever, that it's so weird, but it is a thing that the people deal with. They love Facebook because they're going to find somebody who confirms that, whatever they think about themselves. So let's get to a couple of these comments. Jean, anything else you want to say about the fundraising call time?
Yeah. So talking about removing distractions. So really recognizing where the distraction comes in for you. For some people, it's when they're dialing the number. So calls are great for most folks, but it could be it's in dialing the number. They go, oh, wait a minute, I really don't want to call that person. So I'm going to move 5 people down and I'm going to bounce around. And so the distraction is determining the outcome of the call before you even make it. So folks where that's a distraction, the part of the Ulysses Pact could be automating the calls. Like, no kidding, I'm just calling these people today. I don't get a chance to back out of any of the calls. Like, if
we have several online phone calling systems that we use that we like. And if you don't have access to those, you can simply put your call list into a Google spreadsheet and open that up on your phone. And you should be able to click on the phone number in the spreadsheet and it calls. So that's a couple ways you can do that.
And, another thing that we say is tell someone when you're starting to call.
Yeah.
Like, I'm here. Now it's call time. And
by the way, so Pat has the question, what would you tell a candidate that has a full-time job? There's going to be a lot of candidates out there, especially local candidates, that's going to be the case. I think the Ulysses Pact that you're talking about now could be a very excellent one for somebody who's has to work a full-time job, maybe can't leave their office.
And so perhaps the Ulysses Pact you need to make is with people you work with. and say, you know what, I, I need to be campaigning X amount of hours a week. Part of that is fundraising. So Tuesday mornings and Thursday mornings, I'm going to be making fundraising calls. And so from 10 to 1, that's when I'm making calls, and I'm going to be, and I need you to take, I'm asking you to take on responsibilities that might come up during those times. One thing that you're going to get out of these is that it's not just saying to yourself, okay, self, time to be committed.
Yeah, that's not going to work. The whole point is that the siren call is going to pull you to the rocks and crash your boat. Like, it's just, it's going to happen. What can you put in place? So partly what you're suggesting is some accountability partners. It could be your business, the people you work with, that they know that's not the time to bug you or distract you, because you are going to love to be distracted at that moment. Anything like the thing, like someone comes to you with a TPS report, like to have an office space, that's, oh my goodness, I can't wait to talk about this TPS report. That's going to be the thing you got to do at that moment. It makes it so interesting. So you're going to be easily distracted during that. So, okay, let people know, don't bug me. It could be as simple as put a sign up on your door, don't bug me. And then having the accountability partner, whether it's a campaign manager, it's a finance director, it's a fundraising consultant, it is a friend of yours, that they simply are there to take your phone call at 10 a.m. when you're starting, and you tell them, I'm going to make X number of phone calls and I'm going to raise X number of dollars. And then when you get done with fundraising calls at 2 p.m., you call them and you say, I made this many phone calls and I raised this much money.
Exactly.
And that's it.
Exactly right. And
their agreement with you is, I will call you if I have not heard from you by 10:05 or something like that, and by 2:05.
Yep.
It could be a text message, also could be the way to do it as well.
Yeah. Oh, exactly. And so you can really set that up and say, okay, well, maybe the conversation isn't needed at the end. At the end, you just need to share what happened, and the conversation is needed at the beginning to make sure, because sometimes it could be, hey, you might just need to share with somebody, I don't feel like doing this today.
Mm-hmm.
And they can really work with you to say, hey, that just doesn't work. And Pat makes a good point here. Sometimes the accountability is having somebody sitting there with you.
Yep.
And
if you know that you're the kind of person that having somebody else's time being wasted, if you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing, is going to keep you from wasting their time, and that's most people, by the way, you are likely going to that's one of the most important things. If you have a campaign where you can have the resources to have a finance assistant, or you have the finance director there with the candidate doing calls, the great thing is, if you need a computer, it can be the staff person's computer that's being used, and the candidate does not have access to a computer. And then if you also have the ability to not have it be the candidate's phone, and they just cannot, they have nothing other than the phone calls to keep them interested, that could be extremely, extremely helpful. Okay, so here's the thing that that you're going to run into at some point. Somebody posts something on Facebook or somewhere and says, what a terrible person you are. Most people, not everybody, but most people, that's going to trigger that fear of rejection. That's going to trigger that wanting to avoid looking bad, that affects people, those siren calls. And what are you going to do to deal with that? Well, you can think about that right now. How are we going to deal with that? So, Sean, if you have any ideas, let me know. I have a couple.
Yeah. Well, I think the first is, don't be the one on the easiest way is, don't be the one on Facebook yourself.
Yeah.
We've had
the deleting the Facebook is a great way to start that process.
And we've had some candidates in the past where we said, look, this is really consuming you to a point that is completely unhealthy. Let's just get rid of it altogether. It's time to, like, a personal account, you don't need it. Like, let's just put a freeze on that. And And it was probably one of the most freeing things they ever did.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
And
so,
sometimes later on in the campaign, they will re-upload Facebook to their phone, and that's that's a form of self-flagellation. Honestly, they just want to hear and see all the negative comments.
yeah, so that's one thing. We talked about it in communications the other day. Another thing to do is really practice when we talked about debate prep and some of the other things and communications prep. We talked about the murder boards. So really just thinking about all of the terrible things that someone could say about you from behind a keyboard, and get some trusted friends to just kind of verbally say it to you, because
Mm-hmm.
you hear it, you get it, you can kind of, once you're reading it later, you can kind of laugh it off.
Yeah,
Uh, is
just pull
another
the Band-Aid off.
Yep, is another way to do that. So really just get it to the point of the absurd so that it doesn't have an effect on you.
The next thing is you don't have to. You're going to be in a campaign. If you're running for office, you're a strong person. Yet there's going to be things that people say that's going to have an effect on you. You can have a clear conversation with somebody who their job is partly going to be. It could be your campaign manager. It could be your consultant. And you need to, just like this is part of the declarations, you need to be able to just say to them, there are going to be times where I need to just be gotten, like someone to just get where I'm coming from. I don't need any advice or anything like that. I just need someone to get what's going on with me. And it might feel like this could be a weak thing to do, but honestly, when it's really tough in the middle of the campaign to keep you from going off the rails and maybe doing something that's detrimental to your campaign, be able to call someone up. I just need you to get me. Who's that person who's going to listen to you? That's their part of their accountability. As consultants, we're oftentimes going to be that person. And I will tell people, let me know if you just need me to get where you're at. And so it's really simple. We've talked about this back in January. We did a couple episodes where we talked about this. You really, all they need to do to make you feel better in that moment is to get what you're saying, to get the emotions that you have around it, if they can identify those, and to get the bigger commitment. This is the magic of it. Get the bigger commitment that's behind it, because you wouldn't have those emotions. You wouldn't have any of that if it wasn't for some bigger commitment, some bigger intention that was being thwarted in that moment. And when they get that and they can say it back to you, it's going to actually right the ship, because you're going to remember, oh yeah, this is why I'm doing this. And it's a very powerful process. So you could have that set up in advance for those moments where it just feels like everything is coming at you. It's too much. This is what I need.
Yeah,
Sean, any thoughts about that? You've had a lot of these conversations like I have with a lot of people.
absolutely. But having someone that you can just confide in and say, hey, this is what's going on for me,
Mm-hmm.
whoever or whatever that is. And you want to make sure that you have that, and it's not somebody that's going to agree
Yeah.
that, oh yeah, that is terrible, oh my gosh, and belabor in it. And you also don't want someone, because if the thing is to just get gotten and get it released, you also don't want to be going to someone who says, okay, here are the things you do to fix it, and they're in fix it mode halfway
Mm-hmm.
through whatever you're talking about.
Yeah.
You want to just be aware, like, okay, yeah, I just want to be, and you need to be clear too, like, hey, I'm calling to vent, and that's what that's what I'm doing, or to be
Yep.
heard, or whatever it is, and uh, and whatever else is there around it can be tackled a little later. So
Yeah. Maybe in 30 minutes, we'll have a conversation about solving this in 30 minutes.
exactly,
So for us, a lot of what people hire us for is solving things, fixing things. And we have to be really clear when we're having this kind of a conversation that we're really just having a conversation to let the person vent and really be gotten. That's the important thing. And it's really important to be able to tell them what the structure is. I don't know why it works exactly, but it just does work. When you say what's going on, they're able to pretty much say back to you what's going on. They're able to I get that you're frustrated and angry about this. And the reason why you're angry and frustrated about it is because you're committed to making a difference for your community, and this is getting in the way.
Yeah.
If they're able to get that commitment, once they say the commitment that you have, it will pretty much erase most of the feelings.
So having the clearly defined commitment that you're really living into, and look, there are going to be competing commitments, and we talked about that earlier, but having that clearly defined and something that you just keep at the forefront
Mm-hmm.
can alleviate a lot of these things or allow you to set up powerfully the packs that will make a difference. And so, we talked earlier about feeling the need to co-opt your opponent's messages. Well, one of the ways to avoid that, one of the packs to do that, the Ulysses packs, is to share your vision and message with someone close to you daily,
Mm-hmm.
and just and have them listen for message creep. It could be that person, could also be somebody out on, could be somebody who's out with you at different events. So this is very typical. You might be at one of these forums or whatever, and you're the second one to go, and you start pulling things from the first one. Well, they can say, hey, that wasn't, where did
someone whose job is their job is to identify when we have message creep.
Yeah. And it just be one of the things they do. And they say, hey, just so you know, here's what got communicated today. And that's not necessarily what you're about. And it can get pretty depending on how divergent the messages are, it can get pretty convoluted pretty quick. So as far as avoiding that. And we talked about, avoiding the, recognizing your flaws and really getting into that. And it could be asking someone to look for when these things, could be the way you are, the way you're being pops
it's not
up.
it's not the way you always are. It's just the way you are being in that moment.
Yeah. The ones that you say, hey, these are potential flaws. Having someone that's actually listening for, oh, are these popping up?
Yeah. So the first thing to do, finding these hidden commitments, finding these weaknesses, if you want to call them that. They're not always weaknesses, but we're calling them here distinguishing your top 10 hits of your siren songs.
Yeah.
So these are the siren songs. They're the things that the sirens would be singing to instead of appealing to your better angels, appealing to your demons, and the things that really trigger you and have you. The way to know that you're in this moment where you are the siren songs actually speaking to you is if you feel compelled. If you are like taking action, like these things are making you, whatever's going on, there's a comment on Facebook, there's an attack in the press, whatever it is, and you're being compelled to do fairly rash actions or say something, then you're probably in one of these top 10 hits of your siren songs in that moment, that there's this compelling nature about it. There's another really great Ulysses pact that you can do when you have that compelled feeling coming on, like I have to do X, like you're kind of almost feel crazy about it, like I have to go and do whatever, you're going to do something rash, is when in doubt, call X, call this person. And before you take any kind of action, like when in doubt, go talk to this person, or when in doubt, call a voter and talk to a real person.
Yeah.
And that's one thing we've had with candidates is when in doubt, call a real person and share your vision and bring it back to what you're doing this about. I want to get a couple of these comments and then we'll begin to wrap. Go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead. I want to hear this.
So Pat has, I had to talk a candidate off the ledge about Second Amendment against a lot of advisors in a California, or about 2A against a lot of advisors in the California primary, and he agreed with me. Okay, got it. Thank you. Alex says, I have been guilty of trying to outdo my opponent and sound better than she did or criticize her for being hypocritical. It is not effective and does not work. It should be the vision of the message that we should be bringing to the campaign. We are not in the race to outdo our opponents. We are running to help the people. That's good. You bring it back to what actually makes a difference. Anytime you're in the world of comparison, we're creating contrast, but anytime you are in this world of comparison, it's ultimately you're looking at them as being better than you. If you think about it from a strategic perspective in that moment, you're almost always going to be having yourself not measure up to your opponent. And what happens strategically is when you don't think you're measuring up to your opponent in this one aspect, is then you start to try to be your opponent.
Yeah.
And that ultimately, it seems paradoxical, but ultimately what that does is it doesn't provide people a choice. It basically has two things that are becoming the same. That is why I have always been told to not read your own comments for the candidates. If you're a candidate, it is not helpful. Someone can read you the positive comments, but do not need to get distracted with looking at Facebook comments. Those are all wise thoughts. And I see a fan of Call Fire using that to make phone calls. It's a great tool. There's a number of tools like that.
Yeah.
So Sean, let's. What are some of your closing thoughts on this topic?
Yeah. Well, just to the couple of comments, to what Pat was saying, really thinking about this idea. So sometimes one of the things that we talked about briefly was this campaign by committee. So they might say, oh, this is where you gotta be on this, even if it's not where you are. But really getting like your commitment and what issues are important to you and those types of things, so that you're not being pulled into this like this is what everybody else does. We've said it before here on the show. If your friends were jumping off the Brooklyn Bridge, would you? And as we've said, yes, you probably would.
Social proof.
But just recognizing that. So I thought that was really important. But also this idea, just bringing the message matrix back in for a second to where you can really distinguish some of these things. I think about this exactly, the you on you and the them on you. Thinking back to a campaign where they said, hey, they stand up to people. They take the tough stands. Where what we said about them, internally was, wait, they're just contrarian. They just oppose things. Mm-hmm. But so we tested the theory in the campaign. We said, well, if they're really contrarian, it's not just standing up for what's right, but if they're really contrarian, well, we're going to give them things that the voters don't want them to oppose, that they're going to naturally oppose, because if that's really the flaw, then they'll step into it. And what we found out is, that was the compulsion that we were talking about earlier, right? And so they ended up on the wrong side of issues that really mattered to folks, and said, okay, well, that ended up being a difference maker for a lot of people. They were like, oh yeah, I really thought this person used to really just stand up for what was right, but they really just oppose things.
Yeah.
That's what they're up to. And so,
or ultimately, even if they didn't get that, they just got, I like this, and this person says they don't like it, I'm not voting for this person.
Exactly. And so, but you really gave them, that's where this really is important both ways. You get to do that, and then when you're fulfilling that on an opponent, you get to see where those things might be able to make a difference. So, but you want to make sure you don't fall into the traps yourself. So that's where we're so proud to be able to talk to you about these types of ways to avoid the pitfalls the slip-ups campaigns can make.
So, and kind of my final thoughts on this is that when you distinguish, when you discover your top 10 hits of your siren songs, when you actually go through the process of figuring out what are the things that you get compelled to do, what are those things that if the sirens were singing a song to you would appeal to your demons as opposed to your better angels, the getting clear about that is going to give you power, because they're no longer in the background as a blind spot that's kind of controlling things without you being aware of it. Also, then going into the Ulysses Pacts, creating those actions now, those structures, those systems, in order to empower yourself later on when those siren songs show up. You are actually giving yourself power because you're using your own agency now to create that structure or system later on. And that's important because most candidates, when they get into those situations, they can feel a loss of control. If you're the one who actually put the the Ulysses Pact in place, then you're actually the one who's impacting that moment. So you still are the one who is empowered, and you're the one whose actions are actually being followed through on in that moment. I want to leave people with there are infinite ways to create Ulysses Pacts. Today I was at the gym early this morning, and my gym is it's a great gym, great group of people, and we go at 7:30 in the morning. I have to get up at 6:45. Not a big deal, but there's mornings that are really cold, and I have to walk a block outside and all this stuff. I have a Ulysses Pact with the gym that if I do not show up, I have to pay $12. That's the Ulysses Pact that I have. And there are mornings where I wake up and I'm like, I don't want to walk because I just wear my gym shorts walking a block. It's really cold and I just don't want to do it. But I'm like, I want to pay $12 to not go. So I'm gonna do it. And that's what happens is I end up going to the gym more often than I would do otherwise. I know in the morning that I'm gonna have those thoughts and those feelings and that's what's gonna be going on in my head. And that Ulysses Pact makes a difference for me. So who knows what it is? It could be that every single time you check Facebook during fundraising call time, you have to put $1 in the fundraising jar or something. I don't know. Whatever it is, you can have all sorts of ways to do this. You can have fun with it. There are myriad ways to do it. So have fun with it. Create your Ulysses Pacts. Create your top 10 list of siren songs that could impact you and whatever you're up to. And that will be something that will probably have you be more effective in everything, honestly.
Absolutely.
And if you'd like to get more of these kinds of ideas, advice, and whatnot, you can join our community by texting me personally at 202-918-3345. You'll get a text back. Just click that link to opt in, and you'll start getting stuff. We send out the show beforehand. You get the link so that you don't have to worry about these big tech social media companies telling you when we're live. You can actually just get it directly from us. So please do check that out. You can also go to the website to join our Political Trade Secrets insiders and get exclusive stuff. So go to politicaltradesecrets.com to sign up there. And thank you very much for being a part of the show, Sean.
Yeah.
Let's hear about our sponsors.
Absolutely. Hey, are you thinking about running for office and you want to avoid hitting the shore, hitting the rocks, and you want to be able to have the voyage be seen all the way through? Reach out to us at Olson Strategies, OLSON strategies.com. I'd love to have a conversation with you. You can email me, Sean, SEAN, at olsonstrategies.com or Dustin at olsonstrategies.com. And let's get this voyage started today. And then if you're in the fight and you need to communicate with voters right where they are, canvassing, petitioning, live calling, it's www.grassfire.us. They are the best in the business at it. Make sure that these interactions that you're having with voters make the difference. So it's Grassfire, www.grassfire.us. They also fuel 10centtexting.com. This is your way to communicate with voters right where they are on their mobile device, never too far away. So make sure that you are having those interactions count. Image, GIF, short video right there in the body of the text message. So don't miss it. Don't miss out on your opportunity to communicate with your constituents, your voters, right where they are. 10centtexting.com. Dustin?
All right. Look, I mentioned it before, the big tech oligarchs, whatever you want to call them, they are definitely putting their thumb on the scale when it comes to conservatives being able to have our voices heard. So it is really important that we all together share our content. We help empower conservatives across the country to be able to be the leaders that their community needs, to be able to be effective citizens. So please do join the Share Force, make a difference, help reignite American patriotism. You can do that by going to politicaltradesecrets.com, signing up. You can also email me and Sean. Again, our emails are dustin@olsonstrategies.com or sean@olsonstrategies.com. Also, when you're emailing us, if you know somebody or you are interested in being either an intern or fellow, please do join us on this adventure as we seek to empower conservatives across this country to be powerful political leaders and to be the most effective citizens they can be. So thank you very much. Thank you, Sean, for great insights today and for all that you bring to the show. Thank you to all of you for all the great comments and questions that you had. Really did appreciate it. It's really does make a difference for us to have you be a part of the conversation. And so thank you very much for being here. And tomorrow we'll be back with another great episode of Political Trade Secrets. I'm not quite sure yet what it's going to be, but it's going to be great no matter what, because all of us get to be together here. So join us again tomorrow at roughly 11 a.m. Eastern Time for another Political Trade Secrets.
Join us next time by subscribing on iTunes and get show notes and sign up for our newsletter at politicaltradesecrets.com.